parents in the room. I mean, that's so awesome. Amen. And so I could talk about it for hours. I said to him, you know, I'd rather have you do a little walk with us and talk to us about your path and talk to us about, you know, how it happened and the discernment. I know a little bit about that, but I'm not going to spoil that. Those of you that were able to get to Mass tonight, he talked a little about his parents and marriage and what it means to be married for 60 plus years and what is going through with his family and the way he looks at that from one of the most holiest guys in the world that I know. And so will you please help me give the warmest Omaha, Nebraska Legatus welcome to Father Chris Kubat.
Well, good evening. I was wondering for a minute who he was talking about.
No, you weren't.
But I grew up in South Omaha and went to St. Mary's grade school. Was baptized in Holy Ghost. And from my earliest memories, I had these thoughts of becoming a priest. And I'd play Mass. And then when I got to high school, I went to Ryan High, and there's a Ryan High alumni right there, Mary, right? And Dr. Antone, we were med school classmates, and we have stories about each other, but we have tight lips. Oh, he was a good guy, and he's not talking. But anyway, I had these thoughts about becoming a priest, and then I got into high school, and Sally smiled at me. So I thought, I'm not supposed to be a priest because she smiled at me. And then my dad was a dentist, and he was really good because he did all my dental work, and I really didn't have much dental work to do because he was a dentist. But I had a few cavities, a couple, and so I remember being in a dental chair, and I was sitting there. And he says, you got a cavity here, I got to fill it. I says, you going to give me a shot? No, here's for the time you stayed out late. Powder coming out. Here's for the time you didn't take the trash out. Well, I was a good boy after that. Plus, I brushed and flossed better. So, I got interested in medicine and applied to medical school and got into medical school. That's how I met Dr. Antone, Gary Antone, and put some softball together and was really interested. And when you're in med school, isn't it true, Gary, that you decide right away if you want to do something medical or surgical? And I wanted the knife in my hands. I mean, that's where the action is. I mean, you have hypertension. Here's a script. Whoop-de-doo. You get a knife in your hand and you get to take out organs. And plus my favorite color is red. You know, all bleeding eventually stops, right? So, anyway, I remember my mom telling me one time, you know, the vocation director, Monsignor Kalin in Lincoln, was a friend of the family's. And he was the confessor of this religious sister, who was my first cousin once removed. She was my mom's first cousin, Sister Reginalda Jeffrey. And she was a Kentucky Dominican, and she grew up in Omaha, and I think she was 14 when she went into the religious order, and when she saw me as an infant, God said, pray for this boy. He's going to be a priest someday. So she prayed and she prayed and she prayed and nothing happened. And she prayed and she prayed and she prayed and nothing happened. So then she got a bunch of other religious sisters to pray. Nothing happened. And they're praying and fasting and hair shirts and I don't know what else. Nothing happened. Rocks in your sandals and nothing happens. So there's this whisper in the back of my mind, and so when I would date a particular young lady, there was this tug on my heart. And I would just tell myself, you see, she's just not the right one. And they just kept praying and praying. And then my cousin developed breast cancer. this religious sister, and one of the risks of breast cancer is not becoming pregnant, not breastfeeding, and so religious sisters have a little elevated risk. And it became metastatic, and she suffered terribly. But there's this passage in Colossians 1:24. It's one of my favorite passages. I rejoice in my sufferings for your sake. I make up what's missing in the sufferings of Christ for the sake of the body of the church, for others. So in other words, if you saw some guy walking across the street happy, whistling, "Hey Charlie, why are you happy?" "Why am I happy? Because I'm suffering. I love being in pain. My favorite pain is dental pain. And I purposely don't brush and floss so that the doctor will give me a shot. I mean, to be a nut. St. Paul didn't say, "I rejoice in my suffering because I like to suffer." He said, "I rejoice in my suffering for someone else, for your sake. I make up what's missing in the sufferings of Christ for the sake of others." In other words, we get to offer up our sufferings for others. We are part of the body of Christ. We're on the cross with Christ. So I heard this example from Rosalind Moss on a tape, and it just works perfectly. A little girl comes into the kitchen and says, "Mommy, can I help you bake that cake?" Does that mother need help baking the cake? Of course not. But she lets the little girl help. So when the cake's done, she puts some eggs in, and there's shells in the batter, of course, and then she stirs it up and whatever, puts it in the oven, and when Daddy comes home, she runs to the door and says, Daddy, I helped Mama bake a cake. Is it true?" You better believe it. Did Mother need help? No. When it comes to the cake of salvation, does Jesus need our help? No. But he lets us help. So she suffered terribly. Who do you think she offered that suffering for? Me. And I thank her so much. She rejoiced in her sufferings for my sake. She made up what's missing in the suffering of Christ for the sake of others. So anyway, there I am in my house. I had this house, and I thought I needed a bigger house, a single guy. And I had a car that it went to 0 to 60, and it didn't take too many seconds. You know, I have a car now, it goes 0 to 60, it just takes a little while longer. And so I had this, the Lord said to me in my house, "Hey," maybe the Lord has said this to you, "Hey, why aren't you going to Mass every day? You know the host isn't a piece of bread. You know it's me. You know it's not a symbol. Why aren't you receiving me every day?" So I started going to Mass every day, and that calling that I always had got stronger. Got stronger. So I said, "Oh, well, I'm supposed to be a priest, but I really don't want to do it, but the Lord's calling me to be in the priesthood." So I had a girlfriend, and so I broke up with my girlfriend, and I hadn't said anything to anybody. And I'm staring at the phone. I'm thinking, if I call Monsignor Kalin, if I say I'm in, I'm in. Even if I want to leave, I'm in. I mean, what a prideful thing to say. If I'm in, I'm going to be in. I'm not going to go in and leave. You know, what a prideful thing, right? And so I picked up the phone and I said, "Hey, Monsignor Kalin, I'm in." "In for what? What'd you do now?" I said, "No, I'm in the seminary." And the first thing he asked me is how much philosophy I had, you see. So anyway, I hang up the phone and I said, "What in the world did I do? I don't want to do this. What did I do?" And I'm just dying inside. I don't want to do this. I hadn't said a word to anybody. So I'm just really, and I start praying like crazy to the Lord. Silence. Silence. Nothing. I said, "Lord, I said I'm going to do it. Why don't you help me out here?" Nothing. Silence. So I'm in the office stacked up behind in patients, and so the receptionist, she hits the button. She says, "Hey, Doc, Dr. Kubat, we have this young lady here to see you." I said, "Who is she?" "Oh, I don't know. She's just here to see you." I said, "Put her in the conference room. I'll see her between patients." You don't want to hear this, do you? You're sick. You're sick. You know that? So anyway, she's in the conference room, and I walk in, and there she is, this opera singer that I sent a dozen roses to a year before. Just days after I made this decision. So, and And I don't remember what people have on or anything, but I can tell you what she had on, and there she is, all smiles. She hands me this card, and I open this card, and she says, "Hi, Chris. I'm in town singing the lead part in Guys and Dolls," whatever that is. Is it some kind of musical? And, boy, she had a beautiful voice. And she said, I'm performing at this theater, and I'm staying in this hotel. Why don't you hear me perform, and we can have dinner. Love, or let's just say her name was Annie, and Ann. And so, and then she said, "P.S. Thanks for the roses." And I'm thinking, that was a year ago. And I'm thinking, where were you 1 week ago before I made this decision? And all these, I'm late, and all these patients, hey, come on, we got all these patients to see. And there she is, you know, the woman of my dreams. Yeah, right. And so the devil's saying, really, honestly, the devil and the guardian angel, the devil's saying, look, nobody knows about this. Just go out with her. If it works out, this is Mrs. Right. If it doesn't, go to the seminary. My guardian angel says, listen, pal, you made a commitment. Now, are you a man or a mouse? So I had a lot of graces of going to daily mass, and I said, well, hey, Ann, I'm retiring from medicine. And she thought, wow, I must have hit it big on the stock market. This 37, 38-year-old guy is going to retire from medicine. And I said, yeah, because I'm going to the seminary and studying to be a priest. And her jaw drops. I saw all her dental work. You see, there's this recurring dental theme here, right? She turned around and she walked out of my life, and I just started kicking myself. There she is, out of my life. And right around that time, Monsignor Kalin calls. And I'm at that, there she goes. She walks out of my life, and I let her walk out of my life, and Monsignor Kalin, hey, Chris, how you doing? Fine, I'm doing fine. Hey, let's go to Lourdes and Fatima. Somebody had a heart attack, and he and his brother, who's a priest, dropped out, and there's 2 last-minute tickets, and they were going to leave in 2 weeks. I said, 2 weeks? I'll have surgery scheduled. And can you imagine? Hey, Frank, I can't do your cancer surgery because I'm going to France. I said, I can't go. Look at your schedule. It was open. I hadn't told anybody anything. And so I said, okay, I'm going to Lourdes in France. Lourdes, as you know, we're married here to Bernadette, and they have this Lourdes bath there. So it was a group from Lincoln, and it was a vocation director. And so I flew from Milwaukee to LaGuardia, and I met this group, and I'm walking down the tarmac, or the hallway where all these gates are, and there's this big group from Lincoln. I don't know any of them except Monsignor Kalin. And so I'm walking up there, and he stands up, real loud voice, hey everyone, attention, this is Dr. Kubat. He's leaving his medical practice and going to the seminary to be a priest. And I thought, did you have to broadcast it? Did you have to, you know? And I'm praying, Lord, help me. I said, I'd do it. I'm dying inside. I'm going to make the sacrifice. You got to help me. Nothing. Silence. Zippola from heaven. And then we get on the airplane, and this is so long ago you could smoke on an airplane. And if anybody knows Monsignor Kalin, I think he used 1 match. All day long. It was to light his first cigarette, and then all the other ones were lit by the butts, you know, all day long. So we sit back there, you know, 7-hour flight, you know, where'd you go? I'm right here. Oh, okay. So we get down there, and I'm sitting, and I'm dying inside. And the devil's creaming me. What are you doing this for? And so the French stewardess comes back. And I look at this French stewardess, and I think, this is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. Of course, all the women at this point are the most beautiful women in my life. And so she looks at me, and I'll never forget this. She said something very profound. To this day, I've never forgotten it. It was so profound, and she kind of bent over and smiled at me in this beautiful French accent, and she said, what do you want to drink? And it affected me profoundly. And I looked over at Monsignor Kalen and I said, don't you dare tell her. Well, I guess this urologist from Milwaukee's gonna have this relationship with the stewardess from Paris, you know? And he looks at her and he says, this is Dr. Kubat, and he's quitting his medical practice going to seminary. It was a long 7-hour flight. So we get to Lourdes. Anybody here been to Lourdes? It's my favorite marrying place. So it was time for the Lourdes bath because Bernadette, she dug in this particular spot and there was this spring, and there's been countless cures ever since. I was sitting next to a guy who was a dentist in my dad's class, and he had trigeminal neuralgia and no cure, intractable pain here. He took the Lourdes bath, gone. And everyone who's spiritually disposed receives a spiritual cure, plus minus a physical cure. So there I am. They separate the men from the women, and so you strip down and they dunk you in this cold water. It's water temperature that it's what's the freezing? 32 degrees Fahrenheit? It's 33. And so there you are, and the guy in broken English said, pick up the statue of Mary and kiss it and just ask her what you want her to pray for. So I kissed that statue and I said, Mary, all I want is the graces to do this. And I got dunked in the Lourdes bath. It was like electricity. And I was filled with graces. And the Chris Kubat that you knew, he's dead. He died. And I know what St. Paul says, the life I now live is Christ within me. And the old Chris Kubat, he needed to die, frankly, he really did. And I was transformed. I really was. And God gave me so much more than I gave up. All I care about now is saving souls. That's all I care about. And I thank my cousin, the religious sister, who offered up that metastatic pain for me. Now, you might ask yourself, why did God allow all this to happen? That I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and then I go to Lourdes and I get all these graces. And the graces come from God, but Mary's prayers were very powerful. She interceded with her son for me. But why did God allow this? Because he wanted me to know that I have a mother I can run to. Chapter 2 of John, that miracle in Cana. You have a mother that you can run to. Her prayers are powerful. So people ask me, is having had a medical past helpful? And it is in certain areas. For example, in last October, 4 other doctors and myself, we worked in this team together. We divide and conquer. If you get 5 doctors together, you can really do a lot because you divide up the work. And we had a paper published in the Linacre Quarterly on the link between contraception, abortion, and breast cancer. And it's huge. It's absolutely huge. I knew it was a problem, but I had no idea until we got into it. 1 out of 8 women in the United States get breast cancer. And contraception is one of the 2 reasons, the other one being abortion. And it's staggering. And the other side effect that's serious, and this isn't even tracked, it really isn't, is the blood clot problems. And they do teach us in med school. And everywhere I go, I hear of people who have known of women who've gotten blood clots. Get a blood clot in the leg, deep venous thrombosis, DVT, piece can break off, that's a pulmonary embolus, 10% mortality. So women are dying every year from pulmonary emboli. Heart attacks, you get a blood clot in one of your coronary arteries. I know a cardiologist in Lincoln, a handful of women every year, tries to talk them out of taking contraception. They say, well, I can't go off the pill. You had a heart attack. Strokes. I go, whenever I'm invited, Dr. Gary asked me if I go around and speak whenever I'm invited, and Father Grell in Plattsmouth, just a little parish, asked me to come and talk, and so I talked, and some guy came out right after the homily, right at beeline, and you never know if they're going to get mad and I know thank you. I know a priest who gave a homily about contraception, not about the medical or the pharmacological side effects, but just the theology of it, why it's immoral. And he had a doctor's wife spit on him, and then he had another doctor's wife slap him. And so this guy's coming right at me, and I thought, oh boy, what's going to happen here? And he said, thanks for saying something. My wife, when she was 19, went on the pill for medical reasons. She had a stroke. So she's living with the sequela of the stroke for the rest of her life. And the worst one was when I was in La Crosse, and some family practice doctor came and said 2 weeks before my visit, a woman took her 14-year-old daughter and took her to the doctor and said, I don't trust her, put her on something, and she dropped over dead, big blood clot in her lungs. And I, just as a tester, for the last 10 years, everywhere I go, I ask, has anyone ever seen or heard of women getting blood clots from contraception? Is anyone here? Amazing. But the worst side effect of contraception is all these drugs are abortifacient. They all cause abortions. All of these drugs they do. And because it's a 1 week old 200 cell embryo, it's, who cares? But they're all abortifacient. These drugs were first developed to prevent a woman from producing an egg. That's ovulation, but that's not 100%. And when a woman does ovulate, when she's on a pill, then these drugs function as an abortifacient, causing silent abortions. And I've always have, and I do, always will, have a sweet spot in my heart for physicians. But doctors, they either don't know these side effects, or they do know and they don't care. And frankly, I don't know what's worse. But being a physician and a priest, having this knowledge really helps, because when a priest tells a couple that the birth control pills, shots, patches function this way, notice I didn't talk about why contraception is immoral from a theological standpoint. I'm just telling you how these drugs work and what effects they have on a woman's body. But when a priest does this, the couple's alarmed and they go to the doctor, and the doctor always says, listen, you tell Father McSchmearschmack to stick with his holy water and statues and let me stick with medicine. That's what happens. But so it's very helpful. And then end of life issues as well. But and then sometimes people ask, do I practice? Well, if my mom needs something, well, then I still have my license. But how do you say no to your mother? And there was a priest who was on vacation in our diocese and forgot his insulin. So he called me and I got his insulin for him. But there are a lot of doctors, but few priests. Doctors are like flies, right? There's just a lot of them. We need priests. And we have the power to convect the Eucharist. We have the power to exorcise demons, to forgive sins. And so we need more priests, right? So, and just think of all the people that have a calling to the priesthood and they say no. Like I almost did. But thank goodness to Sister Reginalda that offered up those sufferings. There's one other area that's really, really helpful. Now that the Supreme Court ruled that there's such a thing as gay marriage, it's helpful to know, and you all need to know, because we hear that homosexuality is genetic, right? People are born this way, but they're not. And that doesn't mean someone chooses that orientation, but they're not born that way. There's a wound that's present. And what really nails it is there probably are about 14 identical twin studies. I've got identical twin great nieces, and I'm so proud of myself I can tell them apart. And they've only tried to fool me once, and they know I can tell them apart. But identical twins, they have identical DNA, right? And so if this homosexuality was a a genetic condition, the concordance rate would have to be 100% by definition. It's far from 100%. Plus, reparative therapy, which has been outlawed for minors in California, and Obama wants to outlaw it for minors, but he really wants to outlaw it for everybody, works in a significant percentage of patients. And so if something was, oh, by the way, I'm going to tell you something personal about me. Promise that it stays here. This isn't being recorded, is it? I'm going to get counseling. I want to be, I heard blondes have more fun, so I'm going to go in and get counseling so my hair will change. I'm working on my third hair color. I was a blonde when I was a kid now, and it turned kind of dark brown, and now it's turning gray and falling out. Thank goodness you get all their hair back at the resurrection. But I figure if I work really, really hard, I can get my blonde hair back, right?
Right.
That's genetic. So reparative therapy works in some clients, some patients. That would be absolutely impossible. It's the extent that that wound can be treated. So if you didn't know that, well, it's good to know that this condition isn't. And it's really open season on Christians right now, because Christians are going to, Legatus, wow, what a great group, but Catholics are going to lose their businesses and their jobs. You're going to have to bake that cake. You're going to have to provide that floral arrangement. Counselors going to have to provide marital counseling to 2 men and 2 women. Doctors, you're not safe either, because 2 men are going to come in and one of them is going to want Viagra. You know, you can't even watch a ball game on TV if there's a Viagra commercial. Daddy, what's Viagra? Never mind. It's not a vitamin, but if you don't write the prescription for Viagra, you're going to have to give up your license. And one of the low-lying fruits is our tax-exempt status. That's going to go. Imagine how much taxes that beautiful campus, St. Robert Bellarmine, is going to be. Catholic Social Services, all these schools. It's staggering. So we're going to be targets. So it's not a time to be depressed or down, but it's exciting time to be Catholic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we are to be witnesses and offer up our sufferings for others, for their conversion, and pray for our persecutors. And remember that passage, Colossians 1:24, and I love it. There's power in suffering. I rejoice in my sufferings for your sake. I make up what's missing in the sufferings of Christ for the sake of others. Thank you very much.
Does anybody have any questions for Clot?
No questions? Go ahead.
You have to get back there.
Yeah, that's what we're thinking.
Bring the microphone. So, what do we do then as Catholics? What do you advise us to do? Try to get back to where we need to be. Is it all politics? Is it spiritual? What do you say?
What do we do as Catholics? Mother Teresa said famously, God does not call us to be successful, God calls us to be faithful. But if we're faithful, we're going to be instruments of conversions, witnesses really for others. Look at little Maria Goretti, what she did. She was 12 years old and her father died, and they had to move into this home where another family lived. And there was an older boy, still a minor, but in teenage years, hooked on pornography, whatever it was, back in 1902, and wanted to have sex with little Maria, and she said no, and she was stabbed, and the surgical arts weren't as they were today. And she lingered for a while, and she offered up that suffering for this boy who went to prison. He would have got the death penalty if he was older. And he was so bitter, and she offered that suffering up for him. So if we lose our businesses, if we lose our jobs, if we get persecuted, we need to offer that suffering up for our persecutors. So we went to prison, and guess who appeared to this young man in prison? Maria. And then he had a conversion, went to confession, lived a holy life when he got out of prison. All because she offered up her sufferings, so that's part of it. Offering up our sufferings, because we will suffer. But look what happened in the first centuries of the church, up until the 4th century. It wasn't enough that idolatry exists. No, we're going to make you Christians offer incense to Jupiter and the idols. We're going to force you to do that. And many Christians did. In fact, one of the biggest controversies in the early church was whether somebody that apostatized would need to be rebaptized or not. And the answer, of course, was no, they just need to go to confession and repent. But they gave their life. I guess it's, and I don't know what's harder, to lose your profession or your life. Probably losing your life, but we just need to be joyful in our sufferings. And people see that, they don't understand why we're so joyful. The North American martyrs, the Iroquois Indians who killed the North American martyrs, could not understand why these Jesuit priests were so calm and loving in the face of all these tortures, whereas they tortured other Indians from other tribes would scream out. Well, they became Catholic. And the Indian who killed Isaac Jones picked Isaac as his baptismal name. So really the key is being joyful in our sufferings and pray for our persecutors and for conversions.
Father Kubat, if I can impose on you, you're so humble, and we're so grateful. You've done such tremendous things in Lincoln that these people don't know about, that I'm aware of. 20th and O Street in Lincoln is a fantastic facility, and I've been gone now almost 5 years, and I know you've done so much since then. I'd really like to have you articulate what's happened in the last few years. The Women's Center and some of the things you've done, would you please?
Well, Mike, I'm really glad you pointed out my profound humility, because I'm very proud of my humility. You know, people, things that have happened with Catholic Social Services and St. John Women's Homes, it's really not me. I always wondered how these things happen, and they kind of happen around me. God just does it. And I've got good people and generous donors. So I'm really an innocent bystander, and I really understand people say, well, I really had nothing to do with it, but it really is true. But we are akin to Catholic Charities here in Omaha, and we feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and we have a car program, food, furniture. And did I mention our car program? You know, it's very dangerous having a car program. It really is. By the way, has anyone here ever had a hankering for cheeseburger and fries? Well, about 10 years ago, I really had a hankering for cheeseburger and fries, and my favorite place was downtown Lincoln, and I just had to have it. So the best way to get rid of a temptation like that is to give in. You're not recording this, are you? So I wanted to go to this place. I'm going around the block, around the block, around the block, around the block, just so I could get a lousy, stinking cheeseburger and fries that had such a hankering for it. I'm at the red light. Boom! I get rear-ended. My poor little car, Hastings hailstorm, get hit by a deer, and I get rear-ended. So I get out of the car. This guy gets out of his car. It's got in-transit stickers on it. He goes, I just got my car today. Where'd you get your car? Catholic Social Services. Yeah, we give him a car, and 20 minutes later runs into me. By the way, where do you work, Father? Never mind, get out of here. So and then we have a car program, but one of our latest projects is we have a home for women escaping domestic violence and abortion named after St. John. And women can come from anywhere. And St. John, of course, is a woman who later in life, she was a physician, got married, and in her 4th pregnancy had a tumor in her uterus, and the doctor said, your life or the baby's life, and she gave her life for this baby. And her name's Jana Manuel. I just had an email from her the other day. She came out and visited our home, and so the typical story is a woman will tell a guy I'm pregnant, and he says, get rid of it or I'm going to kill you. And she's lucky if she gets a fist, because sometimes they get inanimate objects. And a lot of the women give up, but some we find out about. Our first woman came from the East Coast, and this guy said, I'm going to kill you unless you get rid of it. She got her 3 children, and she's pregnant, she's mid-30s, a little diabetes, and then you get a little dehydration on board. What do you hire risk for? Blood clots. So she's driving across country to get away. Her car breaks down, Interstate 80, and one of the Lincoln interchanges. So I find out about her. Well, she was so stressed, she had a heart attack in the car. Well, she got a little diabetes, a little elevated blood sugar, dehydration. So they put a stent in one of her coronary arteries, and she gives birth to this beautiful, beautiful, curly-haired boy, and premature, and had to be in the hospital. And this doctor, what an awesome doctor. Those kids stayed at his house. She had nothing. Nothing and nobody. So the day she was going to get discharged from the hospital, she wakes up completely paralyzed on the left side. Now you can tell me if this is unusual. I got another MD here. Any other MDs in the room? Tell me if this is unusual. So she wakes up, she had complete left hemiparesis, sensory, motor, everything on the left side. And I walk in her hospital room 13 hours into this bout of this episode. And I kind of checked her out a little bit, as much as a urologist can do. Not a neurologist, a urologist. I was so disadvantaged that somebody stole my hammer when I was in med school, and I never replaced it. But anyway, as I walked in, the neurologist had walked out poking her with pins. You feel this, you feel this, you feel what? And I realized that there can be some fluidity up to 24 hours, right? But this the deficit was so complete left hemiparesis, that I don't know, after 13 hours, how are you going to 100% get out of that completely normal. But anyway, my heart just sunk. When St. Gianna died, she had a husband, family, resources. When this woman escaped to save this baby, she has other children. She had nothing, nobody. Nothing. Just a clothes in her bag. So she wanted to receive the sacrament. She's a Catholic woman, and I said, we need a prayer. We need a miracle here. So we need to ask St. Gianna for a prayer. So we prayed to St. Gianna's. And as I walked out of the room, I said, oh, St. Gianna, you just have to help her. You just have to. Besides, she's the first woman that we accepted in the home we named after you, for heaven's sakes. Really? I mean, come on now. I walked out of the room, she, boom, bingo, up, normal, just like that. Now, is that the way it usually happens?
No, we see it every day.
I don't think so. I don't think so. But anyway, so we have this home, and the other thing is, you have lives, and you need to get to bed, and it's a school day tomorrow, and it's late, and huh? Oh, it's summer. Oh, well, let me talk another 45 minutes. Lawyer jokes? No way. No way. I love lawyers. I really do. Anyway, any more questions? We'll take one more question. Yes?
Are you a diocesan priest?
I'm a diocesan priest, yes.
Do you have a parish?
I am in residence at North American Martyrs, and because my job is Catholic Social Services, St. John's Women's Home. I'm a Courage Chaplain for the diocese. It's a support group for men and women with same-sex attraction, and I teach a class at the seminary, surprise, surprise, biology, and it's an anatomy course. So I still know what the omohyoid is. So you can come up and tell them all about it.
Speak briefly about the Supreme Court decision from your vantage point as Courage.
Speak about the Supreme Court decision in terms of Courage. Courage is a support group for men and women with same-sex attraction, and these members, Courage members, they're very disturbed about it, and they're for men and women who want to live the truth, want to live chaste lives. They're called to chastity, and they're disturbed by it. And they're just a wonderful group, really. And I know there's an Omaha chapter of Courage. So if you know anyone with same-sex attraction, you know, encourage them to join Courage. It's awesome. And there's a deacon that's in charge of it. Yeah, Father Ryan Lewis can get the information, but it's an awesome group. It really is. But there's going to be some persecution, and so we need to be called to faithfulness. And it's an exciting time to be Catholic, it really is. So I'm proud of all of you, I really am, and I'm home, right? I'm going to go see my mother now. And then tomorrow I'll go to the nursing home and see Dad and feed him, and I can get him to smile still.
Yeah.
I do. I say, hey, Dad, you know why Mama married you? And I'll get this. And then I say, because you're so handsome. And he just smiles. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll be very brief. Again, we want to thank Father Christopher Kubat for his very inspiring talk. It is recorded. I can give you some editing rights if you'd like. Usually I do, but I thought it's Father Kubat. I didn't want you to throttle it back or anything. Our next chapter event, and I do have to say, Father Kubat made a fantastic landlord. He was gracious enough. Our Lincoln studios were in the Catholic Social Services building. When you were in the old building, we were by Pius, and then we moved with you when you moved into the former, it was a restaurant. They didn't have cheeseburgers there, but what was it?
Old Country Buffet.
Old Country Buffet, that's where he moved in. So,
And for 2 years, people kept coming to eat.
so what did he do? He has a fish fry every Friday. And I think you've got plans for that coffee shop too.
Yeah, a little coffee shop and gelato shop with a drive-in window, just to make more pennies for the poor.
So if you're in the area, 22nd and O Street. So our next chapter event is going to be August 12th. It's going to be, we're having a change in venue. We're going to be at the store's trophy room. Our speaker is the owner, that is Tom Markle. He is a Legatus member from the Orange County chapter, and we've been trying to get him to join the Omaha chapter, but he's going to be our speaker in February. And we said rather than go down to the river in February, we thought maybe August and use this one. August would be a better time. So we're looking for a location, Father. We might have it at St. Thomas More, if that works, or maybe St. Peter. We'll see how that goes out. Thomas More? Okay. So it'll be St. Thomas More and then at Store's Trophy Room. And Bernadette Esposito will be our speaker. What is your topic, Bernadette?
Are you martyr material?
Oh, that's Are You Martyr Material? Father Kubat went like this. Okay. The traveling crucifix has been spoken for. You'll have to pry it out of Yasmin Hockey's hands. Actually, you better get over there, Yasmin. There's other people that asked me about it, and I said, well... So the traveling crucifix made its way back here. Please forward any names for possible candidates. We've got a lot of possible candidates. We just had to get them to come. And I know that the men's group, you had your forum today. And I think you're closed out. You've got a full group, or do you have room for one more?
Yeah, we got 7.
Oh, you have 7, so you guys are done. So if there's any interest in another group, whether men's or women's, please let me know and we can find out about getting another one started. Father Lewis, any closing comments?
Not at all. Father, thank you. Beautiful talk. Would you stand and join me for a final blessing? The Lord be with you. May Almighty God bless you. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit come upon you and remain with you forever. Amen. Safe home, everybody. God bless.